I think there's such a thing as being in retail too soon. What really helped us over there is that we had built a brand over the past couple of years online, and then the customers were excited to see the brand in store. But we did that work of building that brand online, which I think was super important. Had we started off straight in retail, I'm not entirely sure we would have had the same success.
Welcome to There Is No Alternative, a podcast about entrepreneurship, where I talk to founders, investors, and executives in the consumer world. I'm Tina Bou-Saba, founder of CXT Investments, where I invest in consumer brands and technology. Today, I am so excited to host my friend Sergio Tache, founder and CEO of Dossier Perfume. I love this business. I have known Sergio and Dossier since 2020, shortly after they launched, and I have been fascinated by what he and his team have been successfully building. In particular, what I find so compelling about Dossier is it is very unusual in the consumer brand world to see what I would describe as true business model innovation. We see a lot of terrific product and brand innovation, but less around actual business models. But this is something that Sergio and his team have brilliantly figured out. I am so excited to discuss this and more with him. Welcome, Sergio. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Tina, thanks so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure chatting with you as always.
Amazing. Okay, where are you today?
New York City. You can't really see the background, but that's the entire Manhattan.
Amazing. And where are you originally from, Sergio?
I was born in Romania, left Romania when I was a young kid, and we traveled a bunch with my parents. My parents were classical musicians. I think they don't say this to me, but I think they think the town skipped a generation with me. So we'll see for the next one. But we lived in Venezuela, we lived in South Africa, we then moved to New Zealand, and then ended up in Belgium, where I grew up before coming to the US. So I did my undergrad in Belgium, worked there a couple of years, and then came to the US to do an MBA at Wharton. And what was supposed to be a 2-year stint became an 18 years.
Very cool. Okay, so let's start with the idea for Dossier. Tell us about how you got the idea and tell us more about how Dossier started.
Yeah, absolutely. So in a previous lifetime, I used to be an investment banker, and then investment banking was an interesting industry, shall we say, but then switched to entrepreneurship and started a hair care brand with a friend of mine, and with very limited budget, really self-funded. And we really made something out of nothing with that company. So that really gave me the bug of beauty, entrepreneurship, and e-commerce. E-commerce was always really my background. And that just gave me the taste of doing more. So then after that, I sold my shares to my partner after a couple of years, started a skincare company that went nowhere. And then the idea of Dossier came up. And I'll tell you more about that in a second. But I think what's important to remember, at least in my entrepreneurial journey, is that the whole point that what I'm trying to do is really give more money back to the consumer. I never really understood the margins, the insane margins that you sometimes see in beauty and perfume. We'll talk about this, but perfume really takes the cake. So my objective was really, how can I put more money back in the pocket of the consumer while still having great quality products? So that's what we did with the hair care brand, which was really hair extensions. Back in the day, hair extensions and still are now very expensive. So we wanted to create a product that was much more affordable. That's what I tried doing this skincare brand with much less success. And that's really what led me to Dossier. So the way Dossier started was really a conversation between myself and the person who became our first investor. We're discussing a bunch of ideas, and the idea of perfumes came up. And it was really a proverbial aha moment where we both thought, there's got to be a better way of doing this. There's got to be a way of offering a high quality product at an affordable price. It didn't make any sense to us that to go out and smell nice on a date, you had to fork out $150, $200 plus to buy a perfume. So what we want to do is take all the elements that make a luxury perfume great. So fantastic ingredients, great craftsmanship, made in France, but really strip out all the things that we find a little bit superfluous. So we don't have a super ornate bottle. We have a simple, elegant bottle. We don't have crazy packaging. We have a simple, elegant packaging. And really, for us, it was about bringing back the industry to what we think it should be about, which is the actual liquid inside the bottle, the perfume, and back to the quality of the ingredients. So that's already Dossier came up, and that was the North Star of the company. We launched it, really making great perfume affordable for the 99%. And that's really what the North Star of the company will always be.
I love that. So one of the things that I have always been so impressed by is the initial brilliant idea that you guys had, which is in the early days, how do you sell perfume online? And this is before Perfume Talk, and we'll definitely talk about TikTok. But what you all did was, the first time I had seen this, which is, well, you tell people what it smells like in terms of something that they know and are familiar with. Can you talk more about that?
Absolutely. The way we launched Dossier was with our Impressions collection. The Impressions collection is really Dupes. So that's how we launched the brand, and that's how we got known. And the idea there was, again, to offer the same high quality product at a much more affordable price so that, everybody can smell nice. We started off with 20 perfumes, and what we did is, simply communicate, this is the expectation that you should have buying this perfume. First of all, yes, great craftsmanship, great perfume, great ingredients, etc. But this is what it's going to smell like. And that really helped us develop the brand and take off, because selling perfume online is not exactly the easiest thing to do. We could have chosen easy channels, but thanks to that approach, by telling the consumer, this is what you should be expecting in terms of olfactive palette from this perfume, is really what enabled us to go, to launch, have initial success, initial traction, and then go from 20 to 50 to 100 plus impressions.
I was, an early customer of Dossier and was so impressed by the quality and again, that initial Dupe model. And I think you were making them in France, right? So
Correct.
like, how did you figure out that part, the whole supply chain of the business early on?
Man, that was not easy. Perfumery was, and I think still is to some extent, a pretty opaque industry where it's not easy to gain access to the right supplier, especially on the perfume side. So, I mean, the roadmap that I always had, that I applied before and that I always have, is you got to reach out to a lot of people to figure things out. So you're going to be reaching out to 50 plus suppliers for the bottle. You're going to reach out to 50 plus suppliers for the pumps. And ultimately, you're going to very quickly realize that there's only 2 or 3 or 4 that you really should be working with. But you need to go through that process of the work, really reaching out to all these people and understanding who are the right people to work with. Especially if you're like me, somebody who's really an outsider from the industry. I had to do the hard work myself and understand who I should be working with. So that's how we started. So initially, we had a perfumer that we launched with. That was actually an introduction from somebody from my network. Ultimately, we thought the quality was decent, but not good enough for the kind of quality that we were looking for. So we did the work. We reached out to a bunch of perfumers, and we ended up with the one we've been working ever since. So pretty much, maybe not day 1, but like day 10. So literally the second batch ever of the company was created with that supplier, and that perfumer is based in Grasse, so really the mecca of perfumery, the birthplace of great perfumery. And we've been working with them ever since. And we're super, super happy with the quality that we have.
Yeah, it's
But
terrific.
that's the process. It's, I always tell people that there's no secret sauce. It's just the basics work. You reach out to a bunch of suppliers, and we can talk about advertising. Basics work. You have a good product and a good marketing plan, things will work out for you.
How hard was it in the beginning when you were just getting going to convince suppliers to work with you? And were people like, "Oh my gosh, this is a brilliant idea," or did they say, "You're crazy, this isn't going to work"?
I think it was neither nor. People just didn't care. Like, okay, sure, you want to manufacture 300 perfumes? Yeah, call me back when you want to do 300,000. Those are literally the phone calls
Okay.
saying, yeah, that sounds nice and all, but this is not worth our time. So in the beginning, to answer your question, it was very challenging because not only you have to find the right partner to work with in terms of quality, but you have to find a partner that's willing to work with your quantities, which are not going to be tremendously high unless you're funded with dozens of millions of dollars, your first batch is not going to be that big. So you need to find the right partner that wants to work with you, which is very challenging. So that part was difficult. We were lucky enough that we found some people who believed in us from day one. So our bottle manufacturer from day one, even with small quantities, believed in us, and now we're one of the biggest clients, which is really gratifying.
Yeah.
Our perfumer, same thing. Very small quantities to start with, but they saw something there and they wanted to take a shot. So we're very grateful to them. And then there's others where, yeah, the conversation was, oh, you want to filling is a process of putting the liquid inside the bottle. So that's really the manufacturing process. You want to fill 300 bottles per batch, per SKU. Yeah. We don't wake up if it's not 10,000 per SKU. So that conversation was a 50-minute conversation, very quickly ended. By the way, the absolute first batch, I filled it by hand myself. So I have a photo of me with a funnel, not the e-com funnel, but an actual funnel, putting the liquid inside the bottle and putting the pump on and crimping the bottle and putting the cap on. So sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
Where were you doing that?
In a windowless basement in Brooklyn. So that was our first office. It was
Wow.
a tiny office with our first employee where, yeah, we are filling the bottles by hand. We fill the boxes by hand. And then we took a big bag and walked over to USPS to drop the first, I don't know, 40, 50 orders in the magnificent New York heat that you might know. So that was in the summer. That's how we started.
Okay. So sticking with that early time period, what was your role as the founder and CEO of the company? What were you doing in the early days, in addition to chasing down all the partners and filling the bottles, like marketing? What else did you have your hands in?
Oh, everything. I did everything in the beginning. Because I mean that's what you need to do. If I take meta advertising, for example, very quickly you hire a freelancer that's going to work on your product and is going to advertise it. But yeah, no, I was doing everything. I was looking at the results. I was telling the freelancer to increase or decrease that campaign, that budget, with his recommendations too. But I was deeply involved in everything because ultimately your responsibility when you start a company is to find the first 5, 10, 50 people who are going to bother taking out their credit card and trusting their money with your product. That is your sole mission. So to do that, yeah, I mean, you're a small team. I mean, there was two of us. So I was involved in absolutely everything, the UX, the designs. The good thing is I had a good understanding of the roadmap that I needed to accomplish to get to the next phase. And it was really being absolutely focused on making sure we get those first orders in. That was very important to me. But yeah, in the beginning, you do everything because you have to. You don't have choice.
How did you find the early customers? How did you break through in beauty? It's like such a crowded space.
I think that ultimately in this whole perfume business and especially in the dupe business, I think where we made the difference was that we came out with a product that was both very affordable, but also of high quality.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Copying perfumes has been around for 200 years. This is not a new concept. I think where we innovated is that we came out not only with a perfume that resembles really tightly to the original scent, but more importantly, it actually is of high quality. That's where I think we make a difference.
I guess so. You're saying it was like the value prop, like the
Yeah.
combination of super high quality at a very compelling price point. Give us an example. What was like those early price points when you guys
So
were launching?
I think the price point and the quality was very important, but then I think what's also was very important is a relentless focus on basics. I always go back to that. That's always been my theme is you need to be focused on basics. So you need to have a good product. That's basic number one. But number two, you need to find those first 10, 50 clients. So you do that. But what we did is we did a lot of influencer marketing because we felt that was a great way for us to get the product known because the product needs a certain explanation around the concept and the price point. And we did big focus on Meta because we found that Meta was one of the best platforms to drive discoverability. So again, we didn't do anything fancy. Nothing that we're going to tell you during this conversation is going to be revolutionary, but it's about really putting those basics together and sticking to those basics. That was important to me. And to answer your question about the price point initially was we started off at $29 for each product. And then ultimately now the price points that we have for our 50 mls is 29, 39, or 49, which is still 80% plus more affordable on the impression side. And we can talk about our own original collection in a second, but it's still much more affordable and of the same high quality than the luxury perfumes that we're inspired by.
Absolutely. So, when did you start to think this is really working? So this, especially since this was the third
Yeah.
entrepreneurial adventure that you'd had, when did you start to think like, wow, we might be onto something really big here?
Month one, month two,
Oh,
I
wow.
knew I knew there was something there because I've been through these phases in the very beginning, and I've been through the good moments, but I've been through also sucky moments. We realize, holy shit,
Mhm.
nobody's buying this. So, which is, you stare at your screen and you desperately wait for an order. I knew very quickly, just because the initial metrics were pretty good. They were not perfect, but you knew that okay, I'm getting a CAC of what was it back in the day? I don't remember. Um, 60 or 70. I can't remember the exact number, but you knew, okay, this is my first iteration on this. I can
Uh-huh.
bring this down. And the one thing is, the other thing that I really focus on, and this is going to help you understand why it's also a success, is I really focus on unit economics religiously. That's something that is extremely, extremely important to me. Am I selling a product at a high enough price and with enough margin that is going to pay for my marketing and my fixed cost? It's as basic as that. But am I doing that? So my initial AOV was low. It was about $45. But I knew that if I brought that AOV back up to 65, 70, I had something to work with. So the initial metrics were good. You could see my COGS were really high because I had no idea what I was doing, and we're ordering super tiny quantities. But you can work with these. So I was looking at those initial unit economics. I was not far away from being break even, like, and I knew it was not optimized at all. So I really had good faith that something was there, and more importantly, beyond all these things, because obviously, if you have really insanely bad unit economics, there's only so much fixing you can do.
Mhm.
We had traction. People wanted to buy our product, and the initial reviews were good. And I remember this anecdotal evidence where somebody was saying, "I'm going to offer this as a gift," and that was another aha moment. Like, okay, somebody's actually offering my impression as a gift to somebody else. That means they're proud to say they're wearing Dossier versus saying, "Oh, I'm wearing whatever Le Labo." No, they were saying they're wearing Dossier. That's something that was important. That's all. That was also a sign of we're onto something here.
I love that. Can you talk a little bit more about working with influencers and
Yeah,
how you got going in that space and how that's evolved over time?
yeah. I think the industry as a whole evolved a lot. But back in the day, what we did is we reached out to thousands and thousands of influencers just to get our product known. That was really, it was a good combination for us to, one, create awareness, but also to have direct response. So we're firm believers in that, especially in the beginning. I think you need to cast a very wide net in terms of who you work with. I mean, you're not going to talk to an influencer who's talking about, I don't know, trucks, but in the beauty world, you can reach to a pretty wide audience of influencers, and they will work with you, and that's how you get also your first awareness moves, and that's how you get your first sale. So in the beginning, we reached out to a lot of them. We tended to focus on the small to medium-sized influencers. We were very keen on video. We feel video has an unfair advantage because our product in particular needs explanation, and they need to explain what the concept is about, what the perfume smells like, and how impressed they are with the price point. I think all that comes through with video. So we looked, at least back in the day, we worked a lot with YouTube influencers. That was something that was big for us. But then, one, I think the industry changes. Two, I think the bigger you become, the more you need to change your strategy. So then it became more on a campaign basis. So launches, making sure we coordinate launches, and also create more deeper partnerships with our top influencers and the big influencers. And all the way up to, as you all know, we created perfumes for a certain subset of influencers. And then if you want to think about the next level of influencers, in this case, celebrities, we created a Machine Gun Kelly's perfume. So MGK reached out to us and we created his perfume. We have another collection coming out now in July with another really, really big celebrity. So we're very excited about that. But that's really the order. I think when you start off, the small to medium-sized influencers are perfect to get those first sales and to get that awareness up. And then with the company growing, you need to adapt that strategy to big and deeper collaborations.
Particularly with the smaller influencers, how do you guys manage all of those relationships?
In the beginning, good old-fashioned Excel. It's a lot of sheets going around. Sorry. But also having a pretty large team. So right now we have over 10 people whose
Wow.
only job is to reach out to influencers. That's the influencer marketing team. So it's a pretty large team. But that's how and then we use to some extent some CRM tools. We use HubSpot to some extent. But ultimately, we try not to overthink the tools that we use. Obviously, you need some tool and some organization because it can become very messy, especially at large scale. But ultimately, it was really about reaching out to those influencers, making sure we have a complete list that we own, and that we reach out to all these influencers. So honestly, yeah, initially a lot of Excel, some SaaS tools, but nothing fancy. It was more the biggest challenge was really the volume and reaching out to all these influencers and making sure we follow up. That was the biggest challenge. And finding them and reaching out to them.
It's a ton of work. It's
Yes,
super impressive how you all have built that.
Thank you.
So I want to talk a little bit more about dupes and the dupe model, because I think for a long time, dupes had perhaps to some people a negative connotation, to others, no. I think today there's a very different perception of dupes, and there is a strong view of, why am I paying so much for this branded item when I could get a similar high quality item for much less? What are your thoughts on dupes broadly? And would you even characterize Dossier today as a dupe brand? Did you ever characterize it that way?
What we always try to do is make perfume affordable for the 99%. That was really our objective. And we started off with our impressions, which, like you say, are dupes. The history of the word dupe and the concept is really interesting. To your point, 10, 15 years ago, it was pretty frowned upon. Now it's the whole rage because, again, like you mentioned, people are wondering, why am I paying all this money for this product that is basically the same? And then the other part is, the younger generation, they're going through a lot of economic anguish. Rent is through the roof. It's hard to find an entry job. 50% of college graduates said the degree was not worth it. I mean, that's insane. So when you think about all these factors combined, we shouldn't be surprised that this phenomenon has been growing so much, and now it's all the rage. On the contrary, it's actually cool now to find an affordable alternative, and people go bargain hunting. There's influencers who are just dedicated to that space. So I think that that's been an interesting phenomenon. I think that phenomenon is here to stay. And by the way, when you have an industry that increases their price points by 10% a year, nobody should be surprised that people are going to start looking for a more affordable alternative. That being said, I think that for Dossier, what's important for us is to be recognized as the fragrance house for the next generation. And what I mean by that is, yes, we launched with our Impressions collection, but ultimately what we want is for you to view Dossier as a one-stop shop. So our promise to you is that we will have phenomenal perfumes for you, sold at an affordable price with the best ingredients. And we've launched our Originals collection, which are our own creations. And ultimately, we want both these collections to succeed and to work. And again, with the overarching principle of offering great perfume at an affordable price. So we launched a bunch of originals that have been growing popularity. As I mentioned to you, we created MGK's perfume. That is his perfume. So he is actually really involved in the creative process of that perfume. We're about to launch a new collection with this new celebrity coming out in July, which we're super excited about. But ultimately, that's the objective for us as a brand, is to have our Impressions collection, our Originals collection, our Lifestyle collection in terms of other categories that we're launching into this year, which we're very excited about. But ultimately, all of this with the two promises of affordability and super high quality. That will never change, whether it's Impressions, Originals, other categories. That's very, very important to us.
Yep. I love how crisp and clear your North Star is for the company. So you built a really successful business over a period of years, direct to consumer. And then at some point, you decided to explore other channels, including retail. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. So I always like to say we did perfume the hard way, which is to sell online. It's not exactly the easiest route, but it worked out for us. And then what happened one day is that Walmart reached out to us. They sent an email to help@dossier.co, and the customer care team initially sent it to me saying, "Hey, I'm 95% sure this is a scam, but before I delete it, you know what? Let me just make sure and send it to you, uh, just in case. Note to self: have a really great customer care team who will not delete that email, because that would have been a $50 million mistake." So that's how collab with Walmart started. We launched in a bunch of stores. Obviously, the pilot, the program did really well. And then very quickly, they rolled us out into 1,400 doors and then 4,000 doors. So, which was an amazing success for us and a really proud moment. But ultimately, we always knew that we needed to branch out in the physical world, because that's where 70% of perfume transactions still happen. It just so happened that we were fortunate enough that Walmart saw the great story developing and reached out to us. And that's how that collaboration started. And I think they're very happy too, because we now are the number one perfume brand at Walmart, which is exciting. So we have over 30 perfumes in their stores, Impressions and Originals. But that's how it started. And what was interesting is that I think there's such a thing as being in retail too soon. What really helped us over there is that we have built a brand over the past couple of years online, and then the customers were excited to see the brand in store. But we did that work of building that brand online, which I think was super important. Had we started off straight in retail, I'm not entirely sure we would have had the same success.
I agree with you. I agree with you. And this is something that has come up in a number of conversations, specifically with respect to retail readiness and having that pull from the customer so that you're not relying solely on the retailer to build awareness? Because I think that's like almost impossible today.
Yeah, 100%. You should see retail as a channel. If you see retail as they are going to build a brand for me, you're going to fail, I think, because it's really up to you to build that brand. They're just giving you more exposure, and they're exposing you to a new subset of clients and customers, and that's great. But you need to do that brand building. Going to retail is an amazing step, but it's a step. It's not an end per se. That's not how you win. So yeah, I 100% agree with you.
How long did it take from that initial outreach from Walmart to actually launch at Walmart?
So they reached out to us. Goodness. The program started in 2022 for Valentine's Day. That was the program that we got. It was a 6-week program that did well. They had reached out to us, I believe, around June of the year before, if I remember correctly, something around those lines. And then that pilot in a program, I should say, in during Valentine's Day did very well. And they reached back to us, say, hey, by the way, you are clearly resonating with the consumer. Would you like to be in 1,400 doors by August? That was in April. So like awesome. That's great news. But now we got to figure out all the logistics behind it. And that's the thing that I learned the hard way is that, and this is going to sound very obvious to you when I say this, but going from DDC to wholesale is a whole different ballgame in terms of logistics, organization, the kind of volumes you need. So that was a big learning curve for us. Just to give you another simple example, our packaging was really meant for online. So it was this elegant, simple brown box, but it was the same brown box for
Mm.
all perfumes. So shit, we got to figure out how to put the name of the product on the box. It sounds silly, but it just wasn't meant for wholesale. So there's a whole bunch of things that we had to do in a very, very, very short amount of time to be ready to launch in August in retail. Meaning that if you're launching in August, you got to ship by July max. So
Yeah.
therefore, we had 3 months to ramp up production, change labeling. So it was quite challenging.
For sure, for sure. And I'm curious, like by that point, or well, maybe taking a step back in terms of how the company had been capitalized over time, you had an initial investor partnership,
Yep,
if I recall, right? But
correct.
overall, I think quite a capital efficient business over the years. I imagine a lot of that due to your focus on the unit economics.
That is exactly it. We raised very little capital, very, very little. So we were extremely focused on unit economics. But when you go from DTC to wholesale, as you well know, your cash conversion cycle is not the same. So, in DTC, you could have 2, 3 months worth of inventory. You have a pretty decent understanding of what your volume is going to be. So you have a pretty decent understanding of what you need to order, the raw materials you need to order. So you can plan around that. Wholesale, the whole new game. You have to invest money into inventory and then hope it's going to sell. So it's going to sell. So that was challenging. But yeah, no, we raised less than $4 million total. So it's a very, very small amount over the whole entire lifetime of the company. And we had to be very careful with our cash. At some point, I remember us having $33 on the bank account, literally 33, because that was a bit stressful. But ultimately, yes, we were pretty efficient with that cash, but we still need to figure out how we're going to scale production to be ready to meet the Walmart demand, which was not easy.
For sure. That's so impressive on the capital efficiency side. What are your thoughts when you see beauty brands raising tens of millions of dollars?
Each to their own. That's not the route I would go down, but that's just me. I feel like raising that kind of money, it makes your life significantly easier, in some respects, but actually makes it also significantly harder in other respects because when you raise 50 million bucks, I pick a number, whatever the number is,
Yeah.
50 million or plus, the expectation is that you're going to be building a very, 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 very big brand. Otherwise, you as a founder are not going to get liquidity because your investors are not going to let you sell for a small amount of money. So what I always say is, know what you get yourself into, and there's no wrong route. Just know that if you go down the self-funded route, it's going to be a hard road and might be a longer road ahead, which is fine. But if you go down the VC route or big capital route, you might have a faster road, but the expectations are going to be very, very different, and the company is not going to be yours anymore. So there's no wrong route. You just need to understand what works for you and need to go in there with your eyes open. That's really it. Um, Raising a ton of money like that would not be my preferred route, but that's just me.
Well, that is, I think, great advice. Now, congratulations are in order because you all recently completed a really transformative transaction for the company. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So we just got an investment from this private equity group called American Pacific Group, who saw the same story that we're seeing, which is great growth, wholesale booming for us, because now what we didn't talk about is that we're in Target too, and we're the number 2 or 3 perfume brand over there too. Our Originals collection growing tremendously. Just recently, actually, with my CFO, we were going through the numbers and we isolated the Originals dollars we're generating. And I was saying to myself, if this Originals perfume brand collection was a standalone brand, these would be insane results. So that's something we're super excited about. And they're seeing the same story as us. Creating a great, high quality, affordable product where it's an impression original, going to new categories, which we're very excited about down the road. And that's the story we want to focus on the next 3 to 5 years. But no, overall, super excited to have a new partner on board. They're super knowledgeable, and I actually really enjoy working with them. And we're all really looking forward to the next couple of years.
That's great. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Also a big relief because those processes are not easy.
I'm sure. Yeah. What advice do you have on that, even like around building relationships and thinking about timing for these types of deals?
I think that what we learned is that there is some magic to some numbers in terms of size where you start attracting the attention of more institutional investors. I think it depends though. Like if you think about the sponsors, they look at certain numbers. If you think about strategics, they think more in terms of portfolio management and portfolio building. So they might take a chance on you at a smaller level. But ultimately, I think that what's important is that you get your house in order from a financial point of view. And what I mean by that is you need to make sure that you are profitable. I'm talking about perfume here, but I think this applies to beauty.
Mhm.
You need to make sure that you are profitable. You need to, or at least you have a very clear roadmap to it. You need to make sure your economics are good. That's very important. You need to make sure that you don't depend on just one channel. If you're a one-trick pony on TikTok Shop, that's amazing. That you can make a ton of dollars on that channel. Is that what's going to get somebody excited about your brand? Maybe, maybe not. So the more proof points you can show that you are a real brand resonating with the customer and that you can be successful on different channels. You don't have to be successful on all the channels, but you need to at least prove you can go into one retailer, for example. I think that's something that people are focused on. But that's really it. And by the way, in terms of timing, it will take you a long time. That is for sure much longer than I anticipated. And I was actually in the industry before as an investment banker, so you think I know better, but you forget how long and tough these processes are. And finally, a huge shout out to the banking team I work with. They were phenomenal, went above and beyond the call of duty and did a phenomenal job. So I think ultimately is also making sure that you have the right people working for you and with you to represent you best. I think that could really make or break a deal too.
Yeah, terrific advice. Well, the last thing I would love to ask you about is how your role as CEO has changed since the early days and pouring the perfume in the small office to today.
It's an interesting one because I think about that a lot. And initially, I think when you're a small brand, well, not a small brand, you're a non-existent company and you barely sold 3 bottles online, you do everything. I mean, that's the route we took, and I'm happy I did that. It was tough, but it helped me understand every facet of the business. And what it instilled in me, and it was there before, but even more so now, is that I like to be in the details. I think details is where things can make or break. So I'm always in the details. The more you grow, the more you need to find that right balance between, being the absolute last little detail and or at a higher level. So, but I still think it's really important to be on top of everything as much as you can. It's a fine balance though, because there's only so many hours in the day that you have. Your role is also to think about the big picture and about the strategy, but ultimately things can go really wrong if you get the details wrong. So all this to say, I think obviously the more we grow, the less I'm going to go into the absolute last little detail because that stopped making sense. But the more you can stay in the grind and in the weeds, I personally think it's important because that's where execution comes from. At the end of the day, if you've proven the initial concept, which we did, the rest is execution. And there's always a saying where there's an embracing of failure, which I think is healthy and good. But there's different types of failure, I think. If you fail because you didn't have product market fit or people didn't like your product, that's okay. That happens. You need to move on. The second best thing after success that can happen to you is a quick failure. If you fail because you didn't execute properly, that's not good. That's not cool. That should not be happening. So I think execution is essential. And to have good execution, at least I haven't found a better way of doing it than having a great team and being in the details with them.
That is wonderfully said. For what it's worth, when I see companies like yours and other brands that I've known over time that have, achieved tremendous success in the marketplace, there has definitely been someone, whether, it's a co-founder or it's the CEO, but someone who is totally sweating those details, right? Sweating the unit economics and things like getting the gross margin, right? I totally agree with you. I think it is crucial to build those foundations.
I'm glad that you see the same thing as I do. I have a sample of one, well, more than one. I have a sample of 3. Um, One of them was a small success, another one was a failure. This one is a good success. But I'm glad that you're seeing the same things as I am. And again, I go back to this and I repeat myself here, but basics work, good execution works, and you don't have to chase the shiny new object or the great new social media platform you can advertise on. It's really about getting those basics right.
That's so great. Well, a terrific idea, a terrific leader, and excellent execution. So you guys really have the whole package. I am so impressed.
Thank
And
you. Thank you for saying that.
huge congratulations to you and your terrific team on your new partnership. And thank you so much, Sergio, for spending the time with us. This has been fantastic.
No, and Tina, thank you. You've been there almost from day one. We met in the very early days of Dossier. You were a very firm believer from the get-go, and I'd like to say you've become a friend, and you've always been a huge supporter of me and the brand, and with your great advice. So thank you for being there all this time.
It's an honor, Sergio. If you liked this episode, find more on Spotify and follow There Is No Alternative podcast on Instagram and YouTube, where we share highlights.